So let me go ahead and introduce myself first, and then I'll talk about the study that I'm currently, or I have been doing, but I have not gotten too much in terms of publishing the work yet. So my name is Ahmed Ashford, and I've been with TCUs for the past, since 2007. I started working in 2007 as an adjunct instructor for Oglala, Lakota College. And I taught adjunct for other tribal colleges as well. From 2008 to 2020, I was a faculty member as well as a department chair in the business department. And nowadays, I just adjunct for OLC as a faculty member for their business program as well as their graduate study program. I have accepted a position at Southern Illinois University this past August, so I moved from Rapid City, South Dakota to Carbondale, Illinois, as a director for the Center for Workforce Education, as well as an associate professor. But my heart and soul still with TCUs. It's hard once you go with TCUs. It's hard to go to different institutions because you feel that connection, and for almost 15 years connection with TCUs, my heart's still there. This work I have done when I was at TCUs, when I was at OLC. Again, it has not been published yet, but that's kind of some of the findings that I found, and hopefully within the next few months, myself and the second researcher, who is Sandy Whiteshield from Rapid City, South Dakota, we'll get a manuscript, an article published about this study. So what this study is about, as I mentioned a little bit ago, I have been with TCUs for a long time, and I have published some articles and related to students, but now I see more and more work published about with students at TCUs in terms of retention, persistence, and so forth. So I thought, and as well as faculty members, and that's what my dissertation was. My dissertation was about faculty member at TCUs. That was published by University of Wyoming, 2014. Nowadays, I thought maybe this one, and then there's an article kind of finalizing the final work that I started at TCUs, and hopefully trying to finish this year. So this work is about leadership for tribal colleges and university perspective of the skills needed to successfully lead TCUs. Now, I have known many presidents, and we have some that have passed away. A great president, I have had many discussions for years with tribal college presidents who are currently serving as TCUs, or who have served at TCU presidents. So for this study, I decided, okay, one of the challenges with TCUs is that understanding the environment that you are in. It's a different than other minority serving institutions, different than mainstream higher education institutions, because there are key things that are involving with TCUs that make them unique, different than TCUs. Than other mainstream higher educations. Partly the culture, partly traditions. So I decided, okay, I needed to hear from native and who have or had been president at TCU. So there are a lot of studies that talk about leadership. Servant leadership, transactional leadership, transformation leadership, and they talk about different styles that would take to lead a higher education institutions. However, studies when it comes to TCUs, there are few or none. Even some of the few that I've seen are not peer reviewed. Like more or less like perspectives from either individuals rather than kind of kind of a peer-reviewed work that has been done. I did not see. So we decided, Sandy Whiteshield and I decided to say, okay, well, it would be interesting to kind of to start the conversation and see how that goes. So again, despite there is a growing body of literature about leadership in different fields, higher education, there are few to none what research called positive research, right? So presidents of TCUs and presidents are pretty much the chief executive officers, okay? But they're not above the community. They're not above the community. So the Board of Trustees selected or elected by the community are on top of TCUs. So there are the many duties that these institutions or these presidents have varies, whether they're planning, organizing, directing, or presenting these institutions, but of course they have to be very interactive with their communities, and we'll look into that shortly. Again, there is emerging literature about leaders even within Native American communities. However, about TCU presidents or TCUs leading individuals, again, there are not many. So the skills that is needed, the characteristics that will lead the next generation, are always talking about the next generation, what the next generation will do. There are not many, right? Especially if we especially if we want some work done, so that the next generation, next Native American leaders, understand the perspectives of the previous generation leaders, right? So that's the area that I encourage more research, and to hear from the previous leaders as well as elders within the community, because that perspective needs to be documented, needs to be presented, right? Again, the literatures, again, there's positive research. TCUs have been in existence since 1968, 69, and there are 37. And the good thing and the great thing about TCUs is that the heart of the community, the heart of the students is the center for, like you have some institutions that, okay, how can we survive? How can, financially, how can we do well? TCUs focus heavily on students, and that, working both at TCUs and working with non-TCUs, that I've seen that firsthand, how TCUs, the amount of things that they care about their students is unlike any other institutions, right? So that makes them unique. Now, when it comes to leadership, again, each tribe, each community in South Dakota, even within one reservation, there are different tush parties, smaller communities, small families. The perspective is different, right? But there are overarching caring and a lot of things about servant leadership is there. But that perspective might vary slightly from one community to another. So accurate knowledge about traditional Native American is necessary in order to counteract misunderstanding and see the differences within Native communities. Even I was in Rapid City on the 4th of July, and I see the activism now with a lot of the younger generation, younger Native American leaders that took place on the 4th of July. Some of you might have seen it, but that was very, very interesting and refreshing to see the younger generation. So what I thought about, because there was no theoretical framework that encompasses our understanding, or using it as a lens in Native American community or one organization, I try this as seeing pieces, like if leadership, here's how the Lakota will lead, the fortitude and generosity and things like that, like what would encompasses the framework within the Lakota and within other tribes. But there was no one framework that I could use about Native American see that would allow me to see as a lens, right? And some of the work that I have seen about leadership are not from non-tribal members, so I could not use them as a lens in Native American community. Just like I would not recommend using my study as a theoretical framework, as a lens to study, because even though, you know, Sandy is native from Sichang Lakota, and I'm not native, but I have, you know, worked with Native Americans for many years, with you know, tribal colleges for many years. I would not recommend it because there might be biases. So it's critical that even as non-natives to understand our biases. And that's basically, I'll explain that in positionality when I finally publish the paper. So it is critical that this study builds, but it should not be as a core study, right? It's critical that I want to put this out there. So I decided to go with theoretical framework that I found interesting. Again, even this theoretical framework is not indigenous. But what I wanted to use is it helps me understand the environment that a lot of leaders are placed in. So the first step in this theoretical framework that I use by Wicker's model for sense making. Okay, I decided to use this because I literally looked a lot and reflected a lot on different theoretical framework to use as a lens, and it was difficult. So I decided to use this theoretical framework, or we decided, Sandy and I. So the first step is for individuals to construct identity. Understand your identity. Who are you as an individual? Who are you as a leader? How do you fit within the community? The second thing that this theoretical framework looks into is experience to better understand how to relate to the work environment, right? Years ago, I was told that there was a teacher who came to a tribal college in South Dakota, and a tribal school in South Dakota, with the idea that I'm here, I know everything, and I'm working to quote safe mentality, right? So that did not go well. That person did not last in his position for too long, right? So it is thus critical that we understand the environment, the culture, the tradition of the community, the people that we work within, right? Another thing is that in this model, understand the social interaction of the organizational members. How are things constructed within the community? How is the organizational culture? There is, of course, there's individual cultures, but there's also organizational culture. So if I am working at Southern Illinois University, which I'm now, that organization culture would not apply to where I was working. So it is critical that I understand the organizational culture within the environment. I understand the people that I'm working with. Different. So the fifth one within the theoretical framework is the nature of sense making, and then moves on. It looks into to help decide basic context to help decide what information is relevant and how that information is relevant to the decision making. And finally, this looks into the plausibility of decision making. How is this decision applies, right? And how the community will react to that decision making. So that will vary. So these are things that leaders need to understand when leading any institution, particularly TCUs. Those are critical things to look into. So because the study, I wanted to look more from the perspective, more from the experience. I want kind of description from these experiences, from these lived experiences. I decided to go with phenomenology, right? I wanted to hear from these lived experiences of these TCU presidents that have served for many years, that have great amount of knowledge on their experiences and how those experiences led them to successfully lead these institutions. A lot of the presidents that I interviewed led for many years. So which means is that they, if you don't lead TCUs for a couple of years, that's max. You might not be there too long, right? I mean, because the community said, okay, well, let's find a better individual that will lead our organization. So anyhow, so phenomenology was basically the theoretical, not theoretical, the method within qualitative research that I use. So now, when it comes to sampling, that was a little bit difficult, and the reason is that there are so many. There are 37 tribal colleges. So I decided to mix it up, meaning that I had to go from individuals that are currently served or have served at TCUs, right? So so basically, the identity of these individuals remains hidden. So I was able to find previous ones and current one. So inherent advantage of this approach basically helps get a rich experience. So I'm talking about the phenomenology. It helps us get a rich context from these TCU presidents. So I was able to use purposeful sampling, individuals that have been TCU presidents, and also convenient sampling to a certain degree, because I was able to identify who these individuals and reach out to them and speak with them about their experiences during interviews. Of course, these names are not actual names, so don't look them up. These are not the actual names, but I was able to get the number of years and the number of years and the number of years that they also served. So even the number of years that served, because this study has been about a year now or less, about a year actually. So the number of years of experience varies a little bit now, and some of them might not be even with TCUs. So anyhow, so those are the individuals I was able to identify, and I've contacted several. Some decided to accept the invitation and participate in the study. Others respectfully says, I will not be able to. So I had to be respectful for their time as well. Then we coded the transcriptions. We developed certain criteria, and I was able to kind of develop themes. Themes, I just want to mention this, especially for a lot of the researchers. As a qualitative researcher, please remember that themes are identified, they don't emerge. Okay, because the term is critical that we use. They are identified. When you say emerge, they pop out of nowhere. So the themes identified in qualitative research. The themes identified from this study were 4 critical ones. Developing a vision that the tribal community support. What is your vision? How are you going to reach that vision? The board of trustees needs to support you, but also you need the support of the community. What are you going to take us in terms of as an institutions, and how will that improve the institution itself? Hence, reflect on the community overall. The second thing, that skills that individuals need to have to lead the tribal colleges, is understanding communication. How do you communicate with traditional and by traditional and non-traditional means? Understand your stakeholders, understanding the community, understanding how you communicate with them. Be part of the community. You cannot, just be a president and says, I'm going to go work and come home. No, you need to be part of that community, even if you are an outsider. Become involved, and that's something that I've heard from some presidents. Understanding tribal and non-tribal politics for fundraising and accreditation. It is critical that there are a lot of politics. I think this is every single tribe that I have visited, worked with. There are some tribal politics. You get to understand them. You get to understand the key, individuals within each community. Work with them, and also you need to understand how to fundraise for your tribal college. Tribal colleges to a certain degree underfunded. So it's critical you learn how to fundraise. Okay, thank you. To fundraise within your community. Accreditation, I honestly, for example, at OLC, that when it comes to accreditation, especially HLC, they are not just to tribal colleges. I have, compared my work at tribal colleges and non-tribal colleges. Tribal colleges do way more assessment, at least 70% more assessment than non-tribal colleges. Yes, I feel that they get picked on. The fourth one and the final theme was having mentors from tribal leaders and non-tribal leaders. I'm sorry, tribal leaders who have been president. Like I spoke with a person. She said she was one of the first few she was president of a tribal college, and she had to go and reach to other tribal colleges presidents. Says, what should I do in the situation? How can you help me with this? So developing connection within the circle, those 37 tribal colleges, you will find a lot of help and advice, especially from senior members. That's kind of some of the references, and I will leave the floor open for a few questions if anyone has any questions for me.